Hi, my name is Eduardo Vela. I'm going to be talking about Google Bug Hunters, which is the way we call people that find security vulnerabilities in Google products. My nickname is Darkat, and before I joined Google, I was doing the same thing. I was reporting bugs to Google products, mostly because I thought it was a difficult challenge and because it was fun. And when I found one by accident, I got hooked and I kept on doing it. At that time, Google was not paying for bugs, so I was just doing it for fun. But I got a t-shirt that looked very similar to this one, and it was cool. Since then, now after I joined, and 1 year after more or less I joined, there has been, we have had the VRP, the Vulnerability Reward Program, where we pay people for it. This is our logo. We don't actually have a logo. We just saw this picture on one of the internal slide decks, and we thought it was cool, so we appropriated it. We added the three things in the side, like the colors over there. Can I do that? Yes. And then we said it was ours. But yeah. Anyway, so I've been in Google for around 10 years, but the VRP only has been around for a long 9. We are not the longest running one. Mozilla has been running significantly longer than us. And in terms of just generally bug bounties, there's another one, which is Knuth had a bug bounty of like very little amount of money for everyone that could find a problem in his books. So we are not the longest running one, but we have been running for a long time. And one of the things that has happened since then is that our program is one of the ones that has been running for a long time that hasn't changed that much internally, like compared to like Microsoft or Facebook and so on. We've been growing in the same, team to say, which we think is interesting, mostly because we have been lucky enough to make some choices that have allowed us to grow consistently for several years. We've processed 60,000 vulnerabilities since then. That doesn't mean that we've paid for all of them. Many of them are very, very low risk, so we just don't pay for them. We've paid for 10,000 of them, which is roughly around $1,000 per reward. This is not completely true, as I will explain in like a second, but this is roughly the case. One thing that is worth mentioning is that Chrome and Android also have a reward program, which we operate independently of them, which means that $8 million is what our program has paid, but Chrome and Android together with us have paid $15 million. And this year we're going to pay 2 just for Google and probably another 2 for Chrome and Android together. So like 50% increase in the last year. This presentation is called Google Bug Hunters because I will be talking about bug hunters. There's also going to be things talking about our processes and things like that, but mostly I want to talk about bugs that our bug hunters found and like kind of introduce them to you. His name is Tomasz Bojarski. He has been reporting bugs to Google for around 5 years, and he is the top earner, let's say, for the Google VRP. He mostly reports XSS, but also code execution and so on every once in a while. And he's really, like, for him, everything is easy. So we just met him like last week, and he was just making a presentation about 100 XSS he found, which are worth around $500,000. And he was just saying, like, this is so easy. And then he was just going through the slides. Easy, right? Easy. So he's great. He's very funny, and we meet him every once in a while, but every time we do, it's a very fun experience. The other one, this is Implum. His name is secret, so I will not say his actual name, but he is also very good. For this year, he is the top bug hunter, and he mostly finds logic out bypass issues, like business logic problems, like we forget to do access control checks properly somewhere and so on. And one of the things to note about these two bug hunters is that this is like very, very tedious, repetitive work, and they spend a lot of time doing this, and they find amazing things just because of the amount of patience they have. We try to do the same thing, we try to automate it, but we are not able to be as effective as they are. So those are the bug hunters. Now, these are not bug hunters. the bug hunters were the ones in the previous slides. This is a whale feces researcher and those guys over there are elephants vasectomists. Do you know what they have in common? Anyone has heard this reference before? So they hold the third and fifth worst jobs in science. The third is the whale feces researcher, and the fifth are the elephant vasectomists. The fourth, according to the Science magazine in 2007, was our job, except for Microsoft. So this, what is it called? The popular science magazine called the Microsoft Security Grunt, or what we equate to our team in Google as the worst jobs in science. And it was kind of interesting when I saw this slide. This is from Katie, Missouri. And I thought it was hilarious, but also I kind of knew kind of why. But then I was like, wow, like it must be worse for them. So we have also full-time roles fulfilling this, but we actually don't have that problem. Like, we don't consider our job that it sucks. And one of these the main purpose of this presentation is to figure out what made it so that we don't hate it. And the TLDR is just that no, you guys have to see the whole thing. So we receive about 800 vulnerability reports monthly. That is valid vulnerability reports. That doesn't mean that all the vulnerabilities are serious, but this it does mean that there's something that we investigate and something is working in some confusing way. After triage, many of them are duplicates or not serious or whatever. So we don't pay for all of them. This essentially means that we have 35 vulnerability reports every day, every day we work, which means it will be interesting to see how many people do you think it will take to manage this. In practice, up to very recently, it was one person. So how to avoid burnout? So the way that we do it for one person, I'll explain what one person means, because now it's kind of two, but it's complicated. So the first thing we do to make this with one person is we have a rotation. And that's with 12 people. So there is 12 people in a rotation going once each. And the reason that we need 12 people, we have tried with less and we have tried with more. We tried with 30 at some point, and 30 is terrible. You shouldn't do 30 because nobody remembers how to do it, and everyone is super inconsistent. And we tried with 8, and it's like the whale vasectomist guy. So don't do that either. It is 2/12 time commitment, which means before it was 1/12, now we have 2/12. So that means before we only had one person at any point in time. Now we have body teams. So yeah, the body team part. So before, the way we handled this was when you were on your week, you owned the whole queue. But that had some issues when we had an incident or something like that. Because if we had something very serious that has to be done right now, you kind of drop in the floor everything else. So we created this body system where the secondary just takes on important things. And then it has evolved into a situation where the primary is supposed to spend as much time as possible, and whatever extra work there is, the secondary works. But we ask the secondary to be there as a backup. Some people use the secondaries differently. I'm still in the rotation, so I use my secondaries mostly as whenever there's a bug that is too complicated to reproduce, I ask them to help. But other than that, they don't have much to do. So the other thing that is important is that we have a helpline. So one thing that is interesting is we have very senior people doing rotation as well. And that part is important for us because the more senior the people doing the rotation, the more confident they are on their responses. And the more confident they are, the less time they spend on it, which means that a senior person can spend 1 hour to 335 reports, let's say. But a junior person can take many days for the same amount of work. And this is just a matter of confidence. And this is another reason why we had the work in pairs, because then we can pair up a very senior person with a very junior one. This is useful, and this will help a lot, because whenever we try to put a different role in front, either someone non-technical or someone just learning, they just blow up and go back to the whale vasectomist thing. So one thing that is not improportional. Is not proportional the seniority with the junior thing. It's like senior people are significantly better at it. And they don't have to be senior at doing this job. They just have to be very confident on the things that they are, on the technology and know what they are doing. Anyway, another thing we have is the Helpline. We have a chat or a group chat where everyone asks questions. And one of the most important things that we found out is that people don't use it unless the senior people use it all the time. So the more senior people have to be using it every time so that everyone feels comfortable asking questions. And whenever we forget to use it for a couple months, we notice that the channel goes dead because nobody else uses it. So that was interesting. Not using the channel has made us very, very, has made it so that they get stuck very early, and having senior people use it has helped a lot. And templates. One of the things that happens is that not everybody, our team, there's a lot of things that are specific to Google that even if you are an expert in things, you will not know what the answer is. And you can ask in the Helpline if you want. But the easiest way to do it is to just have a template that is essentially the knowledge base of our team. And we have like hundreds and hundreds of templates. And it's very easy to write a template. You just write a response and then just click save. And when people just search for the templates, they get to learn something about that someone else previously did. So templates were also an interesting learning. Just having something where people can search for previous responses was something that allowed people to like not blow up. So having 12 people, if possible, but I understand that's not always a possibility. Working in pairs, having a helpline that senior people use, and having a templating system that people use, that people are storing responses all the time, has been the main way that we didn't convert into well vasectomists. Another thing that is interesting about our thing is that we have a lot of people, but a lot of people base their work on the results of the reward program. This helps a lot to justify the existence of the program, but also to justify the existence of our team. So, like previous escalation, Tomasz Bojarski, the guy I just presented at the beginning, he found a way to get code execution in some internal Google things, and that led to some research about how can we prevent this from happening. So this is the previous escalation part of the thing. Security mitigations is how to make exploitation vulnerabilities harder, and the way that they guide their work is based on how many vulnerabilities reported to the VRP are mitigated by their technologies, by CSP, by sandboxing, and whatever. Code hardening, the way that they decide or they justify how much time and effort they spend on hardening certain types of products is based on the vulnerability reward program results. And our product security reviews, the way that we know whether we did a good job or not, is to see for the products that we did security review for, how many end up receiving external vulnerabilities. So generally speaking, like the security response effort doesn't fuel, but it definitely helps the rest of our team justify and do our work better. Another thing that was interesting that we didn't do properly before, and we ended up learning about it after some time, was to separate the money from the technical details. And this is something that this is something that very few other companies do for whatever reason, but this has been very important for us. So the bug hunters, when they report things to Google, we try to make them only talk about the vulnerability technical details. And if they ask any questions about the reward or anything like that, we tell them, we don't know, this is about the panel, and I don't know, tell me about the technical details. And the reason is because the person doing the triage, we call them whoopsies because our team is called whoops, is essentially trying to get convinced by the external user that there's a problem. Because once they are convinced that there's a problem, then they have to convince the product team to fix it. So the person here in the middle is is essentially at first representing Google to the bug hunter and then representing the bug hunter to the product team. So we have the same incentives in terms of like the product team to get the bug fixed. So whatever it is that they explain to us in terms of risk, we will send to the product team. However, sometimes people end up arguing endlessly about money. And by having the person here not have any ability to control that at all, then it's easier for them to say, like, it's not in my control, sorry, this is going to be sent to the panel. Independently of that, then we have the panel, which is a bunch of people, including me, that decide how much money things get. The people here only review things 1 week every 12 weeks. The people here review every bug every week. So people in the panel are looking at every bug every week. This is like 6 to 8 people, depending on the year, looking at every single bug that we received every week. Surprisingly, people here, this is a position that people want to be on. It is not a position that we force people to be on or anything like that. It's not even a volunteer-driven thing. It's like we have to limit the amount of people we have in the panel, because if we have too many people, it's hard to manage. And the reason people like it is because all the bugs that they see are the valid bugs that were triaged already by them. So they are very interesting issues. 2 weeks ago, we had around 75 issues that were in the queue because we have leftovers or people escalate and so on. So this position, although it sounds kind of awkward, it is very fun, like to see all the issues that come in and out. One other interesting thing about this is that people in the panel are not always. So one of the things that happens is that when bug hunters disagree about the reward amount, because we have all of the things that we decide are public, like the criteria we use. So when we decide the reward amount and the bug hunter disagrees, that means that we don't understand the risk properly, because we are using the information that the product team and the engineer told us to decide the reward amount. So if the bug hunter disagrees with the reward amount, then that means that the impact is misunderstood. So we encourage very much the bug hunters to argue for more money, because maybe we misunderstand the reward amount. We misunderstand the impact. So if we get it wrong, then that means that we are not using the severity properly. So the bug might not get fixed properly or might not get fixed quick enough. So by asking them to argue for reward amounts, we make sure that we get the right impact. And by separating the roles, this doesn't burn out the people in triage. Anyway, this worked out very well, and it has helped us catch issues that we didn't realize were as serious as they were until later on. When the bug hunters explained us, sometimes in person. Like last week, we were in London in an event with the bug hunters, and they actually got to show us like that we misunderstood something or something like that in person, and that is pretty much like the ideal scenario for this. So yeah, we also try to, whenever we communicate about bug hunting externally, we try to limit the amount of ways we talk about it as a function of money. Because for many of them, especially people that are already well paid in a normal job, this is not about the money at all. This is just about like cool research or about making things safer and whatnot. But whenever you focus all communications about money, then you alienate all of these people. And this has happened a lot, several times, that we have famous security researchers contact us, and when they see that our communications used to be money related, their tone changed very quickly. And when we change all of our templates to not talk about money at all, just talk about the technical impact, that essentially that fixed those type of relationships. But it's very easy to send away people that just want to help you and don't care about the $5,000 you're going to give them because they already have some money. So, one of the other ways that we managed to attract and retain very senior people to all of this work, like the panel and the triage people, is because the way it works in Google is that people kind of choose the type of things they're interested in, and you cannot kind of force them to do anything. So the way that you convince them to stay doing this work is with more reports. So the reason this is interesting is because if you are triaging a lot of invalid, boring reports, then it is very easy to burn out. But if you are triaging very cool and interesting, challenging, surprising problems and vulnerabilities, then rather than burning out, you get super interested in them. So we have invested a lot in education and on ways of interacting with bug hunters to deliver better reports, mostly as a justification for us to get better reports so that people don't get burned out. So we created this. These are the three more interesting things. One of them is Bug Hunter University, which is just a website in which we teach people the things they're interested in. One of before we had this, so there is a lot of people that are very, very motivated and keep on sending reports every day for like months. And when we saw that some time ago, like maybe 5 years ago, we were very, very close to implementing something that deprioritized their reports. So that was essentially a way of saying all of the reports of this person are invalid, so we don't want to delay the response to everyone else. And we had an internal discussion about it, and we decided not to do that. And instead of doing that, we just talked to this bug hunter, and we told him what we were looking for. Like, we just spent some one-to-one time with them, and not in person, but in chat, and it worked. They stopped sending all of the invalid reports. They only send us the good ones, let's say, which were not that many, but that worked. Based on that, we did BugCat University, in which we figured if we are not telling people what we actually want to get from them, or we give them very little information, or we don't give them technical information, maybe we just tell them generally this is the scope, but we don't give them why this is important, then essentially that leads to a lot of noise. And if we have a lot of noise, we burn out our security research, our engineers. And if we burn out our engineers, nobody will want to do it. So we needed to invest in education in order to keep our staff happy. Anyway, so BugCat University was just a website where we have a bunch of stuff of the things we're interested in. Form submission tips is something that we do just before the report, the bug to us. We do some regular expressions, and based on the things that they say, we just show them some information that this is likely invalid or whatnot. And this cuts the conversation close quickly, because when they send the report, they already know why it is invalid, which has been useful. And lastly, asking questions. So I went to NullCon 4 years ago. NullCon is a conference in India, and everyone from Facebook, Microsoft, and Google got sick after the conference. But there are two things. It was completely worth it, even though some of them went to the hospital. The reason it was worth it is because I learned two things in that conference. We gave a presentation kind of similar to this, but with more vulnerabilities. And one guy at the end came to me and asked and told me I was on interrupts. I was on triage a week before, and we signed our name at the end, so everyone knows that I was the one that reported. So he came to me and asked me, "You triaged my bug last week?" And I was like, "Cool, what was it?" And he was like, "Oh, you rejected it." And I was like, "Why? What was the bug?" Like, it was the first time I met someone that I had rejected a bug on, so it was like an interesting encounter. And he told me, "Oh, it was a clickjacking in whatever." And when we are in our computer, we had these templates, we had these BugCat University articles and stuff. So we can just, with a couple buttons, we can just send them a response answering their question. But this was the first time that I didn't have this, and I had to interact with someone, right? So I didn't know how. I was not going to explain to them or to him the amount of like how he was wrong. So I just accidentally asked him, "Why do you think it's a bug?" And then I kind of dosed his brain, because like essentially he realized he hadn't thought about that part yet. He just realized it was clickjacking. There was missing extreme options. I should report this. And when I asked him, "Why is this important?" or "How can you exploit this?" he hadn't thought about that, which was an interesting insight, because nowadays, when we have someone that is very, very enthusiastic, we just ask them to think about those things, like, why is this a serious, or how is this exploitable? Because in some cases, they haven't thought about this before. And once they think about it, they start reporting bugs where they can answer those questions, and then it's less work for us, at least. And it's very fast to ask one-sentence questions rather than the paragraphs that we had to invest in before. So that allows us to scale a bit better. Another thing that happened in that trip was that I met this guy, Jasminder. So Jas is one of our top 100 bug hunters. We have like thousands, so that's still very good. And when I met him in person, he reports bugs valid more often than not, but he is not all the time valid. But when we ask him, he said that 100% of his, that he has success rate of 100%. And we didn't understand what that meant, right? Which was interesting because the way that he figured this is that whenever he goes after a hunt, which is a group of products, let's say, and he finds something out of the 20 reports he sends, he considers that the whole hunt successful. That essentially is completely different how we see it, because from our side, we don't know when they are on a hunt. We are just in triage 1 week, and we are not able to see them do all these reports over several weeks. So from our perspective, we just see a bunch of invalid reports, and every once in a while, one of them is valid. So thinking about this in this way helped us a lot, because then we created a program called Research Grants, in which we just give them money ahead of time. And if they find something or not, they still keep the money, and we only ask them to report the bugs that are valid, and they get money on top of the grant for every valid report that they send. So there is no incentive to send invalid reports. We give them like between $500 to $3,000, and they just keep it. And if they find more bugs, they get more money on top. We don't ask for a report at the end or anything like that. This is just like we think that they are going to invest some time on this anyway, and we want them to invest on it and find something. So thinking the way that he thought about it, actually, the fact that he mentioned that he goes on a hunt and that's how he schedules his time, and we started asking other bug hunters if they did it that way, and they told us, all of them, they told us yes, then allowed us to create a program that kind of solves several problems at the same time. Grants also solve the problem of duplicates, because it's not a waste of time that you find the same bug with other people. And starting next year, we're going to be doubling reward amounts that are found between 2 people together if they find them as part of a grant. So essentially, like, grants is a way to structure the work a bit better, and it was all thanks to Jazz. Like, that one conversation was like, oh my god. One thing that is interesting is that we have been giving grants for a long time, and one of the things that we found out that before we didn't know, what is the success rate of bug hunters? That means how often when people go on a hunt, can they find something? And we just realized that unless you're Thomas, the first guy I talked to you about, that everything is easy, your success rate is in average 13.7%, which is great because it's almost 1337. And we were very happy when we found that number. So the success rate, 13.7%, means that for every grant that we give, only 13.7% of those have a result. And the other 86.3% get nothing. And we still think this is a worth use of our time, because this is the risk that our bug hunters are taking. Like if 10 of you go looking for bugs in Google, only 1 of you is going to succeed, or 1.3 of you will succeed. So that was interesting for us to find out. And now we know over time, we can slice it in different ways. We can see depending on which product you go after, depending on which technology, depending on who you are, and so on. But that number we didn't have before. Another thing that happened, and this was Escalate was an event that we had last week in London. We had 3 things happening on it. In EG, which is an event with the students, we fly students around Europe to London, and we give them some workshops. BugSwat, we fly our top bug hunters from around the world to London again, and we have them give presentations. And CTF is just the Google CTF finals, and we have some, CTF tasks, and we solve them. Or they solve them. We build them. This is Venkatesh. He's also from India. He's from the second time I went to NullCon. And Venkatesh reported some bugs in Google Cloud Shell. You essentially were able to get shell injection in Google Cloud through a special URL. And it was a cool bug and everything. And we were having dinner the night before the we invited him to go to NullCon to present his findings. We essentially told him, can you please come to NullCon? We will pay for your flights and everything. And we want you to give a presentation about your Google bugs. And he said, okay, he prepared the presentation, he sent it to us. And then the night before, he told me, hey, I noticed that the bug still works. So what's up with that? And we were like, oh, really? And they're like, yeah. But he had reported it to us like 3 months before or something like that. So we had plenty of time to fix it. And I checked internally, and yeah, the team were sitting on the bug still, like for whatever reason. And so he asked if he could still talk about it, and yeah, he talked about it. One of the interesting things that happened about talking about it in an audience like that was that we realized that actually it wasn't too bad. Like the bug wasn't that serious. The bug got fixed like the day after, and it was still like it was worth him 0-daying us on the stage, and it happened a couple of times afterwards as well, than us keeping it secret. So now we have this other event called Escalate, which is the one in London, and one of them is BugSwat, where we allowed bug hunters to talk about on patch 0 days with each other. There is no 0-day or anything. There is no NDA or anything. We just trust them to do that properly. And we also have the CTF. One interesting thing about CTF is that the way that we run it now is that we train other Google engineers to write challenges, and that is a way to do security advocacy around the company. We just teach them the vulnerability they are supposed to write a challenge for, and they write it. And vulnerability write-ups. Many bug hunters don't like talking about their bugs. So this is a bug from the Implum, the second guy I talked about. And this is the first time he talks about the bug. This was a bug in chat.google.com that he could spy on other conversations or something like that. And they never talk about their bugs, which is a problem because without good examples, we cannot show good examples to bug hunters that are just starting. So we started encouraging them. We created a Twitter account and we started telling people to please do it, but then still they were not doing it. So then we paid a YouTuber to write videos about other people's bugs. And because now they become famous because he has like lots of followers, then people are doing it. But it took us like multiple attempts to get people to talk about their bugs. And we want people to talk about their bugs because we want more bugs. Anyway, so the summary for this is one easy way to resolve burnout is to have more cool vulnerabilities. One easy way to not have to handle so many to not get DOS with so many questions is by asking questions yourself to bug hunters, especially how is this exploitable or why. Teaching bug hunters about their about vulnerabilities is a great use of resources and helps in many ways. And disclosure has helped us find more bugs and get more bug hunters with us. And that's it. I think I'm almost out of time, and that's exactly the time. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Is there any question? No? Okay, so you can talk with Eduardo later. Thank you, Eduardo.